Good morning, and welcome to this Conservation Applied and Development, or CARD, webinar, which will report on the findings from a CARD project that investigated opportunities to better serve the BIPOC, low-income, and renter communities with energy efficiency programs. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items before we start. All attendees will be in listen-only mode. We will answer all questions at the end of the presentation, but as questions occur to you, please type them into the Q&A box and send them to all panelists. The Q&A box can be opened by clicking the ellipse in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We'll do our best to answer all questions within the time allocated, but if for some reason we don't get to them, we will answer the rest of them after the webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on the department's website in a couple of weeks. The slide set from this webinar will also be available. I am Mary Sue Lobenstein, and I'm the Research Planning Director at the Minnesota Department of Commerce, Division of Energy Resources. In that role, I identify and analyze gaps within utility conservation improvement programs and coordinate and plan research to fill those gaps. The CARD program is a major tool of that work. With me today is Adam Zoet, an Energy Planning Director at the Minnesota Department of Commerce, where he specializes in the regulation of electric and gas utility energy efficiency programs. Adam's work includes leading the evaluation of energy efficiency program cost-effectiveness methodologies, overseeing the development of an online platform that captures energy efficiency program data reported by over 100 electric and gas utilities in the state, formulating regulatory policy guidance, managing research grants, and assessing Minnesota's utility energy efficiency programs. He is the project manager on the research that's the subject of today's webinar and will moderate the Q&A portion of the presentation. Our presenters today are Carmen Carruthers from the Citizens Utility Board, Edwin Nelson from Terra Luna Collaborative, Gabe Chan from the University of Minnesota Chan Lab, Marty Frank from Efficiency for Everyone, and Metric Giles from the Community Stabilization Project. Carmen joined the Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota in 2016 as the organization's outreach director. She came to CUB with a great deal of outreach experience in both professional and volunteer roles. Carmen has a passion for helping people and providing information so consumers can make good decisions. Edwin is a member of the Terra Luna Collaborative, where he serves as a strategic planning consultant and facilitator. He has over a decade of experience developing community-driven programming and evaluation frameworks for nonprofit organizations. His expertise is identifying strategies to inform and strengthen community participation and stewardship through innovative engagement and data use practices. Gabe is the principal investigator of the Chan Lab and assistant professor at the University of Minnesota Humphrey School of Public Affairs. Prior to joining the U of M in 2015, Gabe received a PhD in public policy from Harvard University, where he was a research fellow in the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs at the Harvard Kennedy School. Marty is principal at Efficiency for Everyone, where she applies her skills to advance innovative, equitable policies and programs that address climate change. As the founder and director of the Shift Collaborative, Marty leads utility groups that collaborate to increase access to affordable, efficient appliances and to increase the understanding of inequities in product markets and develop new policies and programmatic solutions. Metric is the executive director, policy coordinator, and urban farmer with the Community Stabilization Project in St. Paul, which advocates for renters' rights. He currently serves active roles in the Frogtown Neighborhood Association, Equity in Place, the Towerside Board of Directors, the Dispute Resolution Center, and the Circle of Peace Anti-Violence Initiative. A warm welcome to you all, and we look forward to your presentation. This webinar is one in an ongoing series designed to summarize the results from research projects that are funded by Minnesota's Applied Research and Development Fund, which was established in the Next Generation Energy Act of 2007. The purpose of the fund is to help Minnesota utilities achieve their energy saving goal. $2.6 million is set aside annually for the CARD project, which awards research grants in a competitive request for proposal process. Results from CARD projects provide utilities with data to enhance energy efficiency program designs within their conservation improvement or CIP programs. As you can see by this pie chart, CARD projects funded to date have been in all building sectors as well as some that cross multiple sectors. The subject of today's webinar is in the residential and multifamily sectors and will present ideas on how to modify existing programs and design new programs to better serve BIPOC, low-income, and renter populations. Now I'm going to turn it over to Carmen, who will kick us off for today's presentation.
Thank you, Mary Sue. Hello, I'm Carmen Carruthers, the Outreach Director for the Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota. On behalf of the whole project team, thank you for attending today's webinar. We're excited to be with you and share results from our research project titled Strategies for Equitable Energy Efficiency Program Design. We expect the full report to be available to the public later this summer. While this study focused on 2 communities, Black homeowners in North Minneapolis and surrounding suburbs, and property owners renting in areas with Latinx renters, there's good reason to believe these recommendations will benefit many other demographic groups. We have a lot to cover in our time with you today. Here's an overview of the topics we will be covering in an effort to highlight key aspects and findings of the research work. Our project team was composed of staff from several organizations that brought diverse skill sets in research, as well as direct experience working with community organizations and community members trying to access energy efficiency programs. The Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota was the grant recipient and project manager. You will be hearing from many of the members of this project team today. We'd like to provide a special thank you to the steering committee members listed in this slide who participated in the study. They provided valuable insight and guidance as we selected the subject communities and developed recommendations. So why this research? This research adds to previous and ongoing efforts of numerous individuals and organizations dedicated to improving the design, accessibility, and effectiveness of energy efficiency programs, and to specifically address system inequalities. Communities composed of renters, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and those with lower incomes face a number of challenges in accessing energy efficiency programs and receiving the benefits of energy efficiency. The issues identified in this report are not newly discovered, and some stakeholders have already begun seeking solutions to these issues. This research was intended to help us move closer to identify methods to improve the design and implementation of energy efficiency programs to meet the needs of these communities. We are grateful for the related work completed in the past, underway currently, and planned in the future. We want to extend specific thanks to the work of the Twin Cities Energy Efficiency Peer Learning Cohort. This is a group composed of community-based organizations, nonprofits, the City of Minneapolis, and several individuals. They are dedicated to improving how energy efficiency programs are designed and delivered to households with lower incomes, renter, and BIPOC communities. This research project stemmed directly from their work. And now I'd like to introduce Metric Giles, Executive Director of the Community Stabilization Project, who has been part of the Twin Cities Energy Efficiency Peer Learning Cohort and active in the efforts to address housing needs and equity issues in the Twin Cities.
There we go. Hello, everyone. I want to thank the Commerce for this opportunity to participate in the overall project that we have worked on, and all the other members that contribute to this, and especially the residents and the consumers who we was interacted with in being able to reach this point that we're at right now. So CSP. We work with renters, property owners, and other organizations in an effort to create livable, stable, long-term housing. And in doing that, education is like one of our key focus. And what we did a couple of years ago, we collaborated with the Fresh Energy in creating a resource guide, an energy that would help both the property owners and the renters together in being educated on how to have better access to the resources that are available. What we have found out is that there's many resources, but having access and then navigation to those resources are not always a part of that process when we just say, well, okay, we have the resources. So we have that. I'm not going to elaborate on the emerge. That is what it is called. And at the end, I'm hoping people will take a look at that and follow through on that and actually ask some questions because we want to edit that and improve on that as well. I want to just talk about what we actually do at CSP. And I want to just create a real fast situation where we had a homeowner whose property was condemned. And what we was able to do was collaborate with Ramsey County, a property owner and the homeowner, and it was being condemned because of a chimney. And what we was able to do was actually have reach out to the property owner who we had a relationship with, and that property owner purchased the property. Ramsey County was a little flexible in their in their processes, in their rules and policies. And at the end of the day, that property owner was able to rehab, put in an energy efficiency furnace, water heater, take away the chimney, which was not needed. The homeowner, original homeowners, was able to move back into the property as renters. In that process, we was able to preserve a unit, which for those property owners, and create another livable and affordable unit. What we said, part of changing systems change is language. So when we talk about language, most people think of tenants and landlords. If you look at tenants and landlords historically, it's very oppressive and power dominated. So we're working on now through system changes is language change to be complementary to the change that we want. So we at CSP, we actually say renters or property dwellers or property owners. And it's just moving that the focus is the property and that there's an asset and value to that. Last but least, if we want to get to those system changes, we have to start not looking at renters, especially if we say renters and we're talking about equity and we're talking about racial equity, because what we have in the real scenario is that 80% of homeowners are Europeans, and the other 80% of who is not homeowners, which is the BIPOC community, we're either incarcerated, in transition, and or renters. And how do we bring renters into a values place within our social systems? So at CSP, we're saying renter stability will lead to community stability. In order to do that, we have to start having an equitable place at the table for renters when we're talking about housing, when we're talking about energy. And we just need to stop every time that we are making a decision about housing and say, where are the renters? And what's really important about this project for CSP is we're working with both the property owners and the renters, and usually they are not at the table. So being at the table and having a voice within this project was very valuable. Um, I have my 3 minutes. I have a lot more to say, but I'm going to pass it on to Gabe at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Metric. Hi, everyone. I'm Gabe Chan. I'm an associate professor at the University of Minnesota and co-direct the Center for Science, Technology, and Environmental Policy and run the Chan Lab. For this project, together with one of our students at the U, Erica Blevins, we led in identifying the subject communities in today's study that we're talking about. The original intent of the study was to review participation levels in the Conservation Improvement Program among various demographic populations in the Twin Cities. However, the utilities weren't able to share this information with us. There's a combination of data collection and privacy issues that prevented us from accessing this information. And so because we weren't able to look at specific program participation rates in SIP, We used census data, and we sorted key factors to identify communities that were most likely to benefit from improvements in existing energy efficiency programs. So we took on mapping combined with demographic information to develop a tool to understand many of the social, environmental, and economic issues and trends, including energy use and energy burden. So in our study, we were seeking to understand how census data could help us narrow in on what we called strata. Strata are specific geographic areas that intersect with other variables like homeownership or renter status identified through census data. In identifying strata, our team prioritized three demographic criteria that emerged from our analysis: race and ethnicity, income, and housing tenure, meaning renter or ownership status. However, we looked at more than 50 demographic variables to characterize strata. Our main source, as I mentioned, was the U.S. Census. We used the American Community Survey, and through this, the strata, we were able to understand from the American Community Survey energy, demographic, and geographic characteristics to the extent that they're reported in that data. But understanding truly what a community is much more complex than that. And so what we hope to do is understand the population groups and then work towards the self-determined community subsequently through qualitative means. So the team presented detailed descriptions of 6 high-priority strata to the steering committee. Our steering committee, as mentioned earlier, comprised of representatives from community-based organizations working at the intersection of housing and energy justice, plus 2 utilities, Xcel Energy and CenterPoint. So after presenting these strata, we had discussion with the steering committee members and with the project research team. And from there, the team decided to focus the project on 2 of the strata: Black homeowners in North Minneapolis and surrounding suburbs, and Latinx renters in East St. Paul and South Minneapolis. The selection of the strata comprised of renters required a subtle shift in the project approach. While our original research design had called for focus on 3 communities, our research team reallocated resources in order to engage with 2 distinct populations within the Latinx renter strata that each impact the energy efficiency of homes, renters and property owners. So we broke it up in that way. And so this yielded overall 2 communities of focus, again, the Black homeowners and Latinx renters, with 3 target populations: the Black homeowners in North Minneapolis, the Latinx renters, and the property owners renting to Latinx households. I'll go into each of our 2 strata now. So first, Black homeowners in North Minneapolis and surrounding suburbs. This map shows the geographic area focus that emerged from our census data analysis. Our census data, again, comes from the American Community Survey 2017 vintage. We looked at demographic patterns in energy burden, the percent of income spent on the percent of household income spent on energy, income, housing, home tenure, housing age, race, participation in assistance programs, and other key variables that correlate with energy insecurity. For those of you who might be familiar with some of the data analysis around energy burden, this is the same underlying data source. The American Community Survey is the same underlying data source that's used in the Department of Energy's LEAD tool, which is a great mapping resource to understand energy burden and its correlates across the whole country. So what we show here next to the map is a table that has statistics on energy burden for Black homeowners in these areas. Energy burden is significantly higher for these households. All homeowners in the same geographic area, so across racial lines, across homeownership lines, energy burden is 3.5% to 4%. And all Black homeowners across the whole Twin Cities metro have an energy burden of 4.7%. Looking at the table here, we can see that Black homeowners in these 2 strata have significantly higher energy burden, 7.1% and 8.1%. Black households in these areas also spend more on energy in total, $90 to up to $500 more per year, and also have lower income, about $30,000 per year lower income. And so those 2 factors combined, higher energy expenditures and lower income, leads to those higher energy burden numbers we see. So that's our first strata. Our second strata, as I mentioned, was Latinx renters in East St. Paul and South Minneapolis. Here's the map showing the geographic area covering this strata. We see that energy burden figures again on the map here, all households in these communities. So if we just look across homeowners and renters and across racial ethnic lines, energy burden is 3 to 4% in these two geographic areas. But Latinx renters in these areas have a higher energy burden by about 1.5 to 2.5 percentage points. As shown in the table, it's about 5.4 to 6%. So now that you have a good idea of the geographic and demographic focus of our study, I'd like to turn it over to Edwin to describe what we did with this information, how we engaged with these communities.
Thanks, Gabe. Hello, everyone. My name is Edwin Nelson, and I am a strategic planning consultant and facilitator with Terra Luna Collaborative, a Minneapolis-based research and evaluation firm dedicated to supporting systems change initiatives. With the support of the entire project team, I led the community engagement work associated with this project. This effort involved surveying 3 target populations, as Gabe mentioned, Black homeowners in North Minneapolis and surrounding suburbs, Latinx renters in East St. Paul and South Minneapolis, and rental property owners in East St. Paul and South Minneapolis as well. The goal was to learn more about their knowledge of energy efficiency and experience dealing with the costs associated with energy consumption and efficiency upgrades or improvements. We also conducted interviews with 2 of these populations, Black homeowners and rental property owners, and held focus groups of nonprofit organizations working with each population to further explore early themes that appeared throughout the survey process. Our learnings were then compared to the results of similar research endeavors to confirm consistency of our findings. I know that was kind of a high-level overview of our process. Our report goes into a bit more detail, but at this moment, I'm going to transition to sharing a high-level overview of our learnings from our engagement with Black homeowners and rental property owners. However, before I start, I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment to kind of briefly preface that this portion of our presentation is a direct result of our engagement work. The quotes and learnings that I will share on subsequent slides reflect our direct conversations with individual homeowners and rental property owners, and not the perspectives of an entire community or population. This shouldn't be surprising to many of you, if not all of you on this call. The communities and populations we engage are not monolithic. They encompass a diverse range of experience and perspectives. And what our hope is that this presentation and kind of subsequent report will spur future work to explore that diverse range of experience and perspectives that we start to uncover with this initial research endeavor. With that said, let's begin our review. So first, I'm going to touch on key findings from our engagement with Black homeowners in North Minneapolis and the surrounding suburbs. During my interviews with Black homeowners, individuals shared that they view their utility company as a trusted source of information, that they often don't know who to call or where to start in an emergency situation, and often start with their utility company, especially those that are enrolled in a maintenance and repair plan such as CenterPoint Energy's Home Service Plus. Those interviewed also shared that when dealing with an emergency repair or replacement, they typically have less than $300 to spend and are not willing to pay a higher cost for a more efficient appliance. In a non-emergency situation, Black homeowners shared that they often cannot afford the upfront cost of most efficiency improvements, that their monthly budgets are already constrained, and that there isn't room to accommodate discretionary spending. When asked to reflect on an instance in which their budget allowed for an improvement, homeowners shared that they were often overwhelmed by the process and felt that they didn't have the technical knowledge or trusted contacts to make an informed decision. This presents an opportunity, identified directly by homeowners, to equip individuals with the information necessary to make an informed decision about a home improvement during an experience already deemed valuable by the homeowners, a home energy audit. There was a general consensus among the homeowners that we spoke with that the home energy audits are well suited to function as an entry point to energy efficiency. Many felt that it was a valuable experience, but lacked enough attention to affordability. They were confused as to what to do next. However, the majority of the homeowners we spoke with were interested in implementing the recommendations provided, but as I already mentioned, did not have the budget to accommodate or the ability to finance the expense. Now we're going to quickly transition to our key learnings from rental property owners in East St. Paul and South Minneapolis. During my interviews with rental property owners, individual owners shared that they will often wait to make an improvement until something is broken or if a tenant complains, that they don't believe efficiency investments produce a financial return. Owners shared that they derive monetary value from an investment when it allows them to raise rents. And the owners who participated in our engagement work did not believe that efficiency improvements like insulation or a new water heater justified a rent increase. Furthermore, some owners renting to low-income households throughout the Twin Cities reflected that they do not want to raise rents and thus don't have an incentive to make improvements overall. What property owners do prioritize are emergency and end-of-life equipment replacements. When critical building or unit equipment fails or stops performing reliably, owners address these problems immediately, presenting utility programs with a small but critical window to influence their purchasing decisions. And lastly, rental property owners share that only the most generous incentives will get them to replace something that is not broken and about which tenants are not complaining. Despite the fact that property owners are relatively universal in their opposition to making non-emergency replacements, they're also aligned in being motivated to act by generous incentives. I know that was a very quick and high-level overview. Our report goes into a bit more detail, but because we do want to focus on our recommendations and program ideas, I'm going to send it over to Marty, who's going to give you an overview of that portion of our report.
Thanks, Edwin. Hi, everybody. So my role in this project was, first of all, to help design this study, and then to lead this process of taking all of this rich, primarily qualitative data that Edwin and his team uncovered and figuring out what it means. And importantly for us is answering this question of what do we do? What actions do we take next? So before I go into the details of some of the design ideas that we come up with, I'd like to introduce what we think of as a key conceptual distinction that came out of our research. And we think this distinction can really be instrumental in guiding how we design efficiency offers for homeowners and rental property owners. So this distinction is between two very different types of decisions that building owners make. And this finding rose up out of the more detailed questions we were asking and seems to us to have a kind of almost incredible explanatory power. So as you can see from the slide, the distinction is between emergency and non-emergency decisions. So I think it's fairly obvious from their title, an emergency decision, what we do when something important breaks. A non-emergency decision, that's what happens when nothing's broken, nothing's wrong, but we're thinking about making a change, we want something different, something better. And what became apparent to us is that these two types of decisions seem to differ in pretty much every way. And these differences very well might mean that a program or a service that works for one type of decision probably doesn't work that well for the other. And so as I go over these two different types of decisions, I'd like to ask you all to think about which type of decision do your programs address? Okay. So first, is the decision necessary? You know, as is apparent from their names, an emergency decision is just that. A new piece of equipment, a new window, it must be procured and fast, right? So it gets 5 out of 5 exclamation marks. A non-emergency decision, that doesn't have to happen at all, right? It gets no exclamation marks in our table here. And part and parcel with this emergency versus non-emergency nature, it's whether or not it's time sensitive, right? So in one case, it's very time sensitive, and in the other, it is absolutely not time sensitive. And while these first two characteristics are pretty obvious, this third may be a bit less so. So when a building owner is in an emergency decision situation, they are willing to spend whatever it takes to fix the problem, right? If they have to pay extra to get a plumber out to their house over a weekend, they will do it. If a big sale on a piece of equipment isn't happening until Memorial Day, well, that's too bad. But in a non-emergency decision, not so fast, right? There's really no amount at all that an owner is committed to spending. So unless the right opportunity presents itself, unless the argument for making that change is compelling enough, they will likely take no action at all. And so this next question speaks specifically to the Black homeowners that we engaged with, but we theorize that it may be true more generally. Right? And so this is a corollary to the question of how much that owner or decision maker is committed to spending, right? Because if something has to be replaced, then that decision maker is going to find a way to pay for it. Even if that means taking on a high interest loan, using a high interest credit card, or agreeing to a payment plan that is going to leave them without enough money to cover their other monthly expenses. And this was the case for one of our interviewees, right? These decision makers are going to spend that to keep the heat on, to keep the hot water flowing. But for a non-emergency replacement, no way. Okay, and finally, and I think you all probably see where this is leading, is the importance of non-energy benefits, right? And these are the things that I think we in the energy efficiency industry, well, first of all, we lump them together under this rather non-distinct title. And for a lot of us, I think, especially in things like our cost effectiveness calculations, they don't mean a lot. They don't carry a lot of value. But in the case of non-emergency decisions, we really think that these non-energy benefits can make the difference. They do make the difference between a decision maker's go or no-go decision, right? Things like, what does it look like? Am I getting a good deal on it? How is it going to improve my life? And so I think what we see when we line up these two types of decisions side by side is that they appear to be opposites in almost every way. And so I want to just pause and ask everyone again, where do you put your programs in this framework, right? Do you have an emergency replacement program or a non-emergency discretionary upgrade program? Or is the work you're doing more of a grab bag with some tactics suited to emergency decision makers, but others perhaps more appropriate for non-emergency decision makers? So here we're going to talk specifically now about some of the ideas and recommendations that we have. And you'll notice that each one in this table here, and these are 3 program ideas specifically targeted to Black homeowners. And you'll see that they're each categorized, right, as to whether or not it targets an emergency versus a non-emergency decision. And so when you all go and download and review the toolkits that we've put together, you'll see that all of the program ideas, in fact, are categorized in this way. So emergency replacement ideas. So these are our suggestions that aim to capture the opportunities that are presented when equipment fails. All right, so the goal of these ideas is to ensure that all newly purchased equipment is as efficient as it can possibly be. And those programs targeting non-emergency or discretionary improvements, well, the goal of those ideas is to encourage owners, decision makers, to make improvements that are not strictly necessary, right? In cases where the owner has really no reason at all to act. And so here our goal is to convince them that the benefits of making the change outweigh the costs. And our goal specifically is to increase the number of non-emergency efficiency improvements that building owners make. So let's go on and talk about each of these ideas in a bit more depth, first for Black homeowners, and then we'll move on to the ideas that we have to target property owners who are renting primarily to Latinx renters. So as Edwin mentioned, you might have heard him talk about Home Service Plus or Service Plus earlier. And this is something we learned that we did not expect going into this research. So in Edwin and team's conversations with Black homeowners, we found that several of them are enrolled in CenterPoint Energy's service, Home Service Plus as most people call it. So this is a monthly payment plan that provides its subscribers with repair and maintenance of home appliances. And this is really widely used and trusted by the homeowners we interviewed. And acknowledging again that our sample size is small, and we did ask for but weren't able to obtain demographics on Service Plus subscribers in general, we really believe that Service Plus is offering a value proposition that likely has widespread appeal among Black homeowners. And here's why. Right? As Edwin mentioned, the things that Service Plus is offering are exactly the things that our interviewees told us they were worried about when it came to maintaining their homes. So things Edwin mentioned earlier, like not knowing who to call or what to do when equipment fails, concerns about finding someone trustworthy to do the work and getting that person to show up, and then I think predominantly being hit with a large unexpected expense. And so after hearing what Edwin told us about these homeowners' larger life context, I think it's pretty straightforward to see why Service Plus appeals, right? And we began to look at this insight about the value homeowners place on Service Plus as a real missed opportunity for energy efficiency programs. Service Plus shows us what homeowners value. And the question we have is, can an energy efficiency program leverage this? And so here's something else that's important. When it comes to the Black homeowners we spoke with, while they are subscribed to Service Plus, they are still not protected against the unexpected cost of equipment failure. So based on what they told us, we do not believe that they're signed up for the higher cost Service Plus add-on that covers equipment replacement. They aren't in low-income programs that would replace equipment for free. And at least one told us outright that her credit was not good enough to qualify for favorable interest rates and on-bill financing terms. So how can we leverage something that's already working, use it to promote efficiency, and also to protect homeowners against the huge expense they face when equipment fails? And again, I am speaking here at quite a high level. The toolkit that you will soon be able to access has a very granular level of detail on these suggestions. So first and foremost, could efficiency funding be directly tied to equipment replacements, either provided or informed by Service Plus, to ensure that all customers replace with the most efficient equipment, and especially for those customers who cannot afford to pay more for an efficient option in that emergency situation? Could efficiency funding be used to reduce the costs and increase the benefits to qualified Service Plus subscribers? People like the lower income Black homeowners in this study, right? Interviewees told us there were times when they needed but couldn't even afford Service Plus, right? How can we make it less costly for them? Can we help them afford equipment replacement protection? And can we help these homeowners get better financing or extend the term of repayment to make it more affordable? So not being on the inside of either utility programs nor of Service Plus, our research team was not in a great position to say exactly how this could be done, but we did come up with a few ideas. So at a minimum, we see a benefit to increasing coordination between Service Plus and energy efficiency programs. We see an opportunity to increase or to use efficiency funding to increase the benefits and reduce the cost for qualified subscribers. And finally, and perhaps a bit radically, we see the opportunity to create a parallel not-for-profit arm that would provide the same kind of quote-unquote insurance benefits of Service Plus, but with a focus on efficiency. In essence, an efficiency program that also provides repairs and service calls. Okay, so what about the homeowners who have all the same needs that I've just described, but who are not Service Plus subscribers? So we think there's a second opportunity here to offer them the same type of support when they have an equipment failure, for the purpose of ensuring that they replace their equipment not with the cheapest option, but with the most efficient but also affordable option. So these homeowners are going to need the same basket of services. And if we're already offering these things to Service Plus subscribers, could we offer a subset of them to non-subscribers? So things like, and as Edwin mentioned, technical assistance, identifying the lowest cost replacement, help offsetting the initial cost, help creating a payment plan to lessen the burden, and support identifying a trustworthy contractor to do the work. And can we offer this all day, every day, so that we are there when that piece of equipment fails? And because we have to speak quite generally on this webinar, I want to just dive in for one moment to some of the types of tactical details that are included in the toolkit that you will soon have access to. And so here's one thing. When it's an emergency situation, people have to already know that the service is available, right? So that means that targeted outreach and marketing will be absolutely critical. And so for the Black homeowner population we engaged with, there are some clear-cut winners in terms of outreach. And so I mentioned these now to give an example of the types of findings that are in the report, but also to allow all of you to do a quick mental check, right? Are these the ways that you're already marketing the things that you offer or not? So predominant among them utility mailings and especially home energy reports. So this may be one of the most effective marketing tools that a utility has. Our interviewees remembered receiving a home energy report and they remembered reading them and they remembered what was in them. Social media posts from nonprofits. This has been a proven tactic to engaging with specific communities, and online advertising with sites like Nextdoor, Facebook, and Google, the places people go for recommendations and ideas when they're in a crisis situation. Okay, and finally, our third idea. We think that all of the things that work in emergency situations can also be useful to help encourage households to make discretionary and non-emergency upgrades, but with a few key differences. So while on the back end, we can envision the same set of core staff providing these services, there are a few twists. As Edwin mentioned, for non-emergency situations, we heard that the home energy audit works. It works as an entry point into greater information about opportunities. The challenge, of course, is getting more people to do energy audits, and then really getting those audits converted into actual improvements. So we heard stories about having an audit, but not having the money to make the changes, not having the ability to make all those changes at once, and even in one case, not wanting to have the audit at all because of the expectation that high cost recommendations will follow. And so what these owners really need is a set of wrap around support services. So affordability is only one issue. The interviewees we talked with don't have the time and often don't have the connections to get the work done on their own. They also said they need support with planning. They don't do a lot of improvements at once. They tend to space them out over time as they have the money, right? So just a list of measures for them is not going to be sufficient. The list needs to be prioritized. What do I do this year? What do I do next year? And when it comes to things like optional upgrades, efficiency, energy efficiency is not a driver. It's appearance and health that they're focused on, and discounts, right? Only 1/3 of Black homeowners said they'd take advantage of half off on a new water heater, but 70% would take advantage of that offer if the water heater was free. The size of the discount matters. Okay, let's switch gears now to owners of rental properties who rent in neighborhoods where our targeted Latinx population lives. So I want to reiterate what both Gabe and Edwin mentioned, that even though our target population here are Latinx renters, it was our conclusion that in order to provide benefits to them, we really need to target the owners of the buildings where they live, right? The people who make the big decisions affecting energy use, health, and comfort in these spaces. So again, these ideas are categorized based on whether they target an emergency or a non-emergency decision. So first, I want to say that our team feels pretty strongly that convincing property owners to undertake non-emergency or discretionary upgrades is going to be much more difficult than targeting them when they're making an emergency replacement. As Edwin mentioned, property owners are extremely unlikely to undertake discretionary improvements of any kind, and least of all, efficiency improvements. So a high-level recommendation out of this research is to really put our time and resources into meeting property owners when they are making a replacement at failure or end of life. So some tactics to do this. First and foremost, working through those property owners' trusted contractors, their service providers, vendors. Nearly all of the owners we interviewed said that their first call when something breaks is to a trusted venue. Unlike homeowners, they are not Googling or looking on Nextdoor for recommendations. They already know who to call. So this approach is going to require intensive outreach and marketing, right? We'll need to identify who property owners turn to and then provide those people with all of the information they need to sell the upgrade to efficiency. And a lot of the smaller property owners, at least the ones we spoke with, prefer to work with smaller vendors. And here's another really important thing. In an emergency situation, we are going to need to cover 100% of the added cost of the efficient upgrade. So the owner is already prepared to pay to replace the equipment. They are just not going to pay any more than they have to. And that means we are not likely to be successful if we only cover part of the added cost of the efficient option. Okay, when it comes to non-emergency or discretionary upgrades, I really want to level with you here. It is going to be tough. I'm almost out of time, so I'll just give a few highlights, and then I will encourage you to dive into the details later when you're able to access the toolkit. So Edwin said something earlier, and I think it bears repeating, and that is generous incentives. So while in an emergency situation, we can get away with covering just the added cost for the efficient option. In a discretionary situation, that is not enough. However, we don't need to be as generous with rental property owners as we do with homeowners. So rental property owners are business people, right? They will replace a working water heater for free, but 2/3 will do it for 50%. And that's a lot more than homeowners. A couple other key tactics for property owners, critical to let them use their trusted contractors to do the work. And we cannot require them to ask their renters for financial information. They are very unlikely to do it. So one last example of the type of granular tactical recommendations in the toolkits. 4 things that we can speak to when we're trying to convince property owners to make efficiency upgrades. These are 4 key interests that we heard from them. And these 4 things can also be used to help get them to do energy audits. So number 1, getting free stuff. So this was the main reason they told us that they do energy audits to begin with, to get the free things that come with that. Second key interest is addressing renter complaints. Property owners value good renters, and they will do what's needed to solve problems when those good renters are complaining. Third thing, staying up to date. The property owners we spoke with, they've owned their properties for a decent amount of time, and they feel like they are not up to date on the latest and greatest, especially when it comes to energy efficiency. And finally, fourth key interest of property owners is reducing expenses, especially those, of course, that are paid by the property owner. So things like common areas or exterior lighting in particular. Okay, and finally, an infographic to wrap up. To promote energy efficiency, especially in these populations, our options need to be low cost. We need to prioritize replacements for both homeowners and rental property owners during equipment failure. And of course, we also need to work at the same time to address non-emergency improvements, discretionary improvements, by doing what we can to make it easier and lower cost. And so now I will pass back to Carmen to talk about next steps on this project.
Thank you, Marty. I'd like to again thank our project team for their hard and creative work. As in most research work, we need to determine how we move forward with these ideas. There are likely to be several steps involved, and we're looking forward to hearing comments on these ideas and coordinating with all the organizations and communities that should be involved in its implementation. It is important that people who are in most need of program improvements continue to have a voice in what improvements are pursued and how they are implemented. So some of the next steps that we see is that we will be actively sharing these research findings with a wide variety of audiences. We will also need to dig into issues of implementation. What requires further exploration and study before it can be brought forward as a practical solution? There will be several opportunities to implement the recommendations, and existing processes like the upcoming utility triennial plans, which is a process in which utilities propose their energy efficiency programs every 3 years, is a key opportunity. Additionally, efforts led on a community level and by local governments will be critical for potentially piloting ideas and/or championing a proposed program idea. Lastly, continual coordination and communication with all the interested and affected parties will be necessary to maintain momentum and make program changes. These changes will benefit renters, BIPOC communities, and households with lower incomes so that their homes can be comfortable and healthy and produce less carbon emissions. Most importantly, we believe these programs should be possible without undue financial burden. And with that, I'd like to pass it back to Mary Sue. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone, for that was a great presentation. Really good. If you have not already done so, please type any additional questions into the Q&A panel and send them to us. Adam, do you have any questions for the project team to get us started?
It looks like questions are coming in. So one question that somebody had was, what about electrification, say the ideally non-emergency switch from a gas furnace to a highly efficient electric heat pump? This may be of interest to low-income homeowners and renters, but the incremental cost may be significant, or they may need help to keep their, oops, sorry about that, 1 second. Sorry, my window closed. Or they may need to keep their gas furnace for backup. Recommendations for how we justify much larger incentives in SIP if you think we need to provide an incentive for 100% of the incremental cost.
Okay, I'll maybe start with that, and then I'll invite the other panelists to jump in and add additional comments. I think that we're really going to have to look at this issue as the triennial plans are being developed to figure out if there are good, cost-effective opportunities for people who are interested in electrifying their home to pursue this. We're also kind of closely watching how the federal weatherization program is taking opportunities to work towards electrification. I think there's definitely low-hanging fruit when it comes to folks who are already heating their homes with electricity or with propane or other delivered fuels where it's currently cost effective, because we did hear loud and clear cost is a big issue for the populations that we studied. So we want to be very careful about that, and it's a key issue as if we're transitioning towards electrification, that we keep cost in mind as well as equity issues and environmental issues. And I'll invite the other panelists to jump in and add to that.
I would answer yes, but it depends on whether or not the electrification moment is at the point at which the existing gas stove has failed, or whether the existing stove is working just fine. So I would throw that back into the emergency versus non-emergency framework and say if the equipment is working just fine and the attempt is to get someone to replace a piece of fully functioning equipment, then yes, I think our research suggests that it will be necessary to pay all or a very, very large share of that cost. I'm curious what my other colleagues on the research team, if they agree with that.
So this is metric. I would like to say that with renters, and I will add before I speak on that, is that we also need to have more report back on the renters, equal and equitable to the homeowners and the property owners. But with the renters, with electrification, how do we provide more education and information on how the usability of the electricity or the gas or any other utilities that are being provided to them, so that when a renter is said that you only pay electric, and you don't, they have a feeling that they aren't paying for the water or the gas or those other things, and they actually are. So if we have more policies and that said that property owners must require information and that to the renters about their usage, I think they would have more responsibility towards the usage of that, and if it's electricity or gas.
Great. Thank you for the great answers. Another question that came in was wondering ways that Minneapolis and St. Paul can help more renters and homeowners apply for LIHEAP, often a challenge for property owners to ask.
Yeah, so additional awareness of existing programs is really important. In the work that we do in our organizations, we found that partnering with trusted organizations is a really good way to get information out. So I think a lot of focus on from municipal perspective would be finding those organizations they can partner with that are trusted resources for the communities in which they're trying to reach, more actively. And I'll maybe see if Edwin has any other additional comments on that.
Yeah, thanks, Carmen. Similarly, I was going to recommend kind of utilizing, trusted organizations, or what we've called kind of in this project, community connectors, to facilitate the communication process. One, because oftentimes convincing an individual to apply for a particular program depends on the relationship in which that convincer has with said individual, right? And so the best thing you can do is, instead of from a city knocking on someone's door and saying you should apply for this program, working with an organization or individual, group of individuals that already have that trusting relationship developed, educating them, keeping them informed of the programs, and then the trick is also compensating them for that work to go out into community, to work with homeowners, to work with renters, to work with other community members to facilitate that application process. I think second, there's a lot of misinformation that crops up in these kind of benefit programs, if you will, in particular with both some of our limited engagement with renters, but also with Black homeowners. there's a lot of misconceptions around when LIHEAP funding runs out. And in fact, I was speaking with one homeowner in particular during the most recent season, and they specifically told me when I asked if they had applied for energy assistance, they said, "Oh, I thought the money had run out. Someone told me." And I had to kind of tell them, "Well, that's not true. Where did you hear this from?" And it was from, the proverbial grapevine. And so it's important that, people in these positions, so those are your community action agencies, those at the city offices, are in constant communication about the status and availability of funds, and communicating that effectively to these trusted contacts, these community connectors, to ensure that we're combating this misinformation that often crops up around benefit programming, to ensure that people don't automatically assume that they're not eligible or there isn't any money left when that may not be the case because they heard that from someone in their network or community.
I've just also kind of mention one thing that's kind of like the flip side of that coin of trying to get more people who are qualified enrolled in these programs. And I think what we uncovered is that, clearly many people who would qualify and would benefit are not enrolled. And that really shines a light on the problem of using enrollment in these programs as the gateway into a higher level of service and higher financial benefits. And I think that's true both for programs targeting individual homeowners as well as for property owners, right? When we require people to have gone through that process of enrolling in a kind of a low-income tagged service, either individually or, a proportion of residents in a building, we essentially exclude a substantial population of people from receiving the level of benefits that it will take to provide them with efficiency.
Thank you for the great responses. I see that we're almost to noon, and I see we also have a list of really great questions that have still come in. So I'm thinking maybe I'll ask one more question and then we can address these other questions that have come in offline and get responses to everyone. So this is for the project team. What do you think is the single most important takeaway from the results of this study?
Marty, would you like to start with that?
Sure. I'm not sure it's good news. This is difficult, and there is not a silver bullet for providing efficiency, at least to the two populations who we studied. There are a cluster, a number of things that all need to happen in order for us to be successful in this. And I think we need to really step back and take a look at what we're doing now and how well it fits with these communities' needs. I think that the positive takeaway is that these are knowable things. Edwin and his team did a fantastic job working with the steering committee in lifting up the types of things that we can do. And so I'm both a bit overwhelmed by it, but also encouraged.
I could build on that too. I think that part of the biggest takeaway for me is thinking about the value of this kind of deep engagement with communities in informing how we structure programs. That the kind of insights from this, I think, were super valuable. We were only able to engage with two communities. And I think that, as we said at the top, some of what we found is perhaps generalizable to other BIPOC communities, but I think there's a lot of other communities we weren't able to look at, indigenous communities, communities in rural areas, thinking about the programs that exist in other utility service areas. I think there's a lot of additional complexity, but I think to me a big takeaway is that we were able to learn a lot by talking with individuals in those communities and asking them these deep questions that I think can help inform program design. And so I think there's a lot of value in attempting to replicate this in other communities to understand what's specific there.
So, Mr. Metric, I thought this was a really good program and that we need to continue this process of not just talking and listening to people, but a process that keeps the people at the tables, at the commerce level, at the utility level, at all levels in an equitable way so that we don't just do a hit and miss. that we have an ongoing consistency with this type of effort that actually creates pilot applications that create outcomes that positively impacts people.
Thank you all. Yeah, this is an excellent discussion and really appreciate everybody who submitted all these great questions through the Q&A, and we'll be sure to get you responses to the ones that we weren't able to address live during the webinar today. But really appreciate all of the discussion, and with that, I will pass it back to you, Mary Sue.
Great, thanks. I totally agree. It was a great discussion. And if you have follow-up questions about this project, feel free to contact one of the project team or one of us. And the recording of this webinar and the slide set will be available on our website. The recording probably in a few weeks, and the report about a month. There are quick links on the CARD R&D page that you can use to link to those. And there's other resources as well on this page if you want to check it out. And just a couple more things before we leave. I just want to remind people of some upcoming webinars. On July 27th, Great Plains Institute will share insights they gained in a project that interviewed utilities and community organizations about how Latinx businesses interact with existing efficiency programs and ways to increase participation. On the 4th of August, the Center for Energy and Environment will report on key findings from their study, which investigated the possibilities for displacing central air conditioners with more efficient dual fuel heat pumps. And on August 18th, Slipstream will explore using the lens and framework of SIP to understand energy issues related to food sovereignty and resilience in Indigenous communities in Minnesota. If you're not already signed up to our email list, you can do that using the link on this slide, and that will keep you up to date on both SIP announcements as well as upcoming CARD projects. One last thing, there is a short evaluation that launches after this webinar. Please take a few minutes to fill it out and let us know how we did. Thanks again, and have a great rest of your day.